Fear is part of life. You can live in it or you can live with it. But just know that like fear is not the thing that should take you down. Fear is not the thing that should take you down, because most of the time fear is false.
What's up, everyone? You're listening to the Do Hard Things podcast by Elite SRS. The purpose of this show is to share stories of hardship and victory as an encouragement for those in the middle of their own hard thing. Because we know hardship produces perseverance, which produces character, which ultimately produces hope. Today's guest is Michael Chernow. Michael is the founder and CEO of Kreatures of Habit, a restaurateur in New York City, and a fitness and food influencer. He shares about the abuse of his father when he was a young boy, which drove him to drugs and alcohol as an escape. After nearly dying, Michael was able to get help and become sober, turning his life around. He reminds us that we've already made it through everything to this point, and the only thing left to do is get back up. If you enjoy the show, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so more people can be encouraged by the stories we share. Now, here's the conversation with Michael Chernow. Okay, I'm Michael Chernow on the Do Hard Things podcast. Super excited to have you. Thanks for hopping on.
Oh man, pumped to be here.
Yeah, well, let's give folks context for who you are. And I like to do that with the same question, which is when people ask you what you do, how do you answer it?
That is a great question, and it's kind of changed recently since I've launched my new business, Kreatures of Habit. For years, when people would ask me what I did, I would say I was in the restaurant business. And then I got sick and tired of saying I was in the restaurant business because I was in the restaurant business as a young guy. I opened my first restaurant when I was 28. And I felt like saying I'm in the restaurant business was like an old guy thing to say. So what I started saying when I actually put some thought into this, and I was like, what is it that I actually do? And I make memories. I'm a memory maker. You know, my job, if I do my job well, I am making positive memories for people in an environment that I've created that is not just feeding them, but offering community, camaraderie, and relationship. And so that's really what I would tell people I did. And so I've definitely, now that I'm in a different industry, Kreatures of Habit, which is a digital direct-to-consumer CPG brand, I really do try to apply the same philosophies where I didn't want to create a CPG company. I wanted to create a wellness brand that made people feel really good. And so I'm just trying to help people make better nutritional decisions. And that's what Kreatures of Habit is. Yeah. So that was
you kind of touched on the transition from making memories to Kreatures of Habit and what you're doing now.
The goal for me with Kreatures of Habit is, and we're doing it, is creating this community of people that just want to be better, right? Like, it's not be the best. It's not be perfect. It's not never have a burger. It's hey, like on a daily basis, we just want to be better. We're active people. You know, the brand of Kreatures of Habit also really does align with active human beings, people that are moving their bodies on a regular basis, that believe in, you know, movement is medicine. Like that's our tribe. And so what I've created is a product that I've been eating for many, many years as my first meal of the day. And the reason why I kicked off Kreatures of Habit with the first meal of the day is because that's when we start. That's when the decision making starts. And I said, if I can put an easy to implement, convenient, super delicious, and healthy meal in front of someone that they could take with them anywhere they go, super easy to make. If I can give them that habit to start their day with, then the chances of them making better decisions, not only with nutrition, but just in general, because a healthy meal makes you feel better. When you feel better, you perform better. If I can give that to someone, that is going to really allow people to feel like they're part of this community that we're building.
Yeah. So cool. So I've had this thought a lot. You're making the comment like Creatures of Habit starts with the first thing in the day because, it can lead to other, I felt like discipline begets discipline. Like it's kind of how I've always said it in my mind. Like if I can make a disciplined, wise choice here, there's like a carryover effect that I'm like, I feel it's easier to be disciplined in other things because I already won on the one. It's like, why would I want to go backwards? And so I love that you're helping people like do that right out of the gate. It's kind of like that. I forget where it's from, but the like military sergeant is like, start by making your bed. It's like win that first moment so that you can start the day correctly.
Well, if you really think about it this way, right? And I say this often, great decisions tend to make great decisions.
Yeah.
Great decisions rarely make bad decisions. Bad decisions tend to make bad decisions, and bad decisions rarely make great decisions. So if you really think about it like that, I know that was a little complicated, but like great decisions make great decisions. They just do, right? Like if you start with a great decision and the outcome of a great decision will tend to be positive most of the time, and then ultimately will snowball into better decisions. So I kind of like to say, if you can start with great decisions, chances are it's going to paint a good picture of what the rest of your day looks like. And I also, like when you really think about it, we have one day. You got one day to make decisions. You can't make yesterday's decisions. You can't make tomorrow's decisions today. So you get a day to do it. You get one day to do it. So if you start strong, you got a better shot at performing strong throughout the rest of the day.
Right.
And it's a simple philosophy.
Yeah. Well, I love that like what you're trying to do is for the good of people, right? Because there's lots of things that we all could do that it's like, I don't know if this is actually helping humanity, but helping people redefine habits in their mind, make good decisions. I think nobody's going to argue that that's worth your time. And I love that you're doing it. So one more question before I transition us into the kind of central question of the podcast. But, your wife, when you first told her you were going to switch from restaurants to direct to consumer brand, she said, all right, so you're going to have an oatmeal business. Like, how long did it take her to like catch on to the vision that you had? And like, does she see it now? Is she on board? Does she get what you're trying to do?
I mean, my wife, we've been together for a long time. We met when I was 24 and she was 22.
Okay.
So we just celebrated 18 years together. And she knows I'm a crazy son of a bitch. I mean, she met me. So I've been in recovery for almost 19 years. And so she met me like 6 months after I stepped into the sobriety world. And I told her from the beginning, I was like, hey, I just want to be honest with you. Like, I am an extreme human. Anything I do, I take it to the absolute, end, and I can obsess over like some really weird things, and so when she met me, I was training Muay Thai kickboxing, and I had made that my life. Like that was like, I was working in the restaurants world, but I was training Muay Thai 4 hours a day. I was like, if you can handle this, like, and so when I told her that I was going to do the oatmeal thing, she knows. I mean, she finds it hilarious that I eat the exact same. Dinner's always a wild card for me, but my breakfast, my first meal of the day, my lunch every day, and basically my 2 snacks every day haven't changed in years. Years.
Yeah. And
so she, when I told her I was calling the business Creatures of Habit, she was like, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So she was on board pretty quick.
It's like you find something that works. I've been like, I'm 42 years old. I've been in, basically the exact same shape since I'm 25. And I'm in good shape. I compete. I'm an athlete, and I know I really care about what I put into my body. Like I really, really care. And so.
Yeah. So she understood. It just took a second for her to process the transition between physical brick and mortar to
like guy opens up a bunch of restaurants in New York City to now slinging, oatmeal, protein oatmeal.
Yeah, you need to bridge the gap somehow. So
Yeah.
it makes sense that she would wonder. If you enjoy the podcast, please do us a favor and head to your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. It helps a ton. And there's a reason all the podcasts you listen to ask you to do this. We want to continue to encourage people in the middle of their difficult seasons, and your ratings help boost our podcast visibility and the stories of our guests. Did you pause it and leave a review? If so, thank you. All right. Back to our conversation. Okay. Well, I want to transition to the purpose of the podcast, which is it's called the Do Hard Things podcast. And the reason for that is everybody goes through hard stuff. And when we're in it, it's really hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, to have perspective or hope. But when you hear people's stories that have walked that road before you in some way, shape, or form, and they recognize that, they go, oh, this was worth it for this reason. It can often like pull you out of that valley for a moment at least, or give you the perspective and hope you need. So that's the goal, is that people's stories of the hard things they've been through and how they've grown would encourage somebody in the middle of their own hard season right now. So the way that we try to get at the story is a singular question, and that's, what is the hardest thing in your life you wouldn't take back, and why?
The hardest thing in my life I wouldn't take back. Ooh, that's so good. The hardest thing that I've ever gone through in my life that I would not take back. I mean, I think there's probably two.
Okay.
Can I say two?
Yeah, I won't
Okay.
cut you off at one.
One is probably the incredibly abusive relationship I had with my father, which ultimately led me to about a decade of drug and alcohol addiction. Those two things were unbelievably hard in my life for years and years, but I wouldn't change either of them.
Which is wild to say, right?
Yeah.
And I think the question is like, why? Why would you not take those things back?
Because they have sculpted the human I am today. Is really, at the end of the day, for me, when I really think about who I am today, I'm a loving father and husband. That's what I want to do. That's really what I want to do. I want to love my wife, and I want to love my kids, and I want to have as much fun as I can with them for as long as possible. And if my dad wasn't so painful for me, if my dad and I didn't have so many physical, emotional battles, maybe I wouldn't know what it was like to have a bad father, which ultimately I wanted to go the other direction. You know, my dad was not a good father. Like, I'm not one of these people that sit here and say, oh, you know, my parents did the best they could. Like, no, my dad did not do the best he could. I don't blame him for my problems, for the shit that I went through, because there's no point pointing a finger at someone. Like, that doesn't change anything. But he did not do the best he could. He was a terrible father. He kicked the shit out of me, and, like, you know, really, really made me sad and angry. And then ultimately I found escape from that life in drugs and alcohol, which also probably at that time, when I was 12, 13 years old, when I really dove into that, saved my life. Because I think at that point, you know, I was admitted to a mental institution because I wanted to kill myself. I was miserable. I was really sad. I was really miserable.
You're at the end of it.
I don't know if I would have actually gone through with suicide necessarily. I say that very, very, you know, cautiously. Suicide is like a real thing, and plaguing a lot of you know, a lot of our people in this country, specifically military. But I slit my wrist right in front of my dad, and I wanted him to hug me and tell me he loved me and he was sorry, and he didn't. He kicked my ass, and you know, and that's when really a lot of things changed. And so, you know, I went into drugs and alcohol, and I loved it for a long time, until it got really ugly for me, and it became less about escaping the pain of my childhood, and way more about a reliance on something that I felt I needed to survive. And it was killing me. And literally, I overdosed towards the end, and I luckily did not die. I'm sitting here today, but I was able to get through that. I was able to get through that 10, 11 year trudging in the mud, and come out the other side and be a totally different human. Like, I am not me without that. And I like me today. I really do. I'm not ashamed to say I love me today. I love me. And I think that that's an important thing. I think a lot of us struggle with that piece in our lives, where we either put people in, before us, and we're ashamed to say, hey, we're the priority, or we're at the top of our totem pole. Like, if you're not at the top of your totem pole, you've got to start digging deeper, because you should be at the top of your totem pole. Because when you are the number one priority in your life, everyone else around you benefits. They do. Now, that's not to say you should be like, the way I think that through, and the way I break that down is, I am my number one priority. I make sure that I am well, because when I am well, I can love 100%. If I'm not well, and I'm so concerned about me not being well, I don't feel good, I'm depressed, I don't feel like I want. If I'm living that I need life, how can I possibly be available for those around me? So if I can take care of that stuff with fitness, nutrition, meditation, breath work, I sauna, I cold plunge, I stretch, I do all these crazy things super duper early in the morning for me. I wake up at 4:45, 5 a.m. before my family gets up. I do all this shit between 5 a.m. and 6:30. I take care of myself completely, head to toe. And by the time they're waking up, I'm all theirs. All theirs. But I prioritize myself, because I know that I'm better for them when I feel well.
Yeah. And there's an interesting paradigm in that, right? Like, you're trying to prioritize yourself for the good of other people. You're talking about your family. And I do this too now. I wake up way earlier because I need to be available for my family, when they're awake. And it's like you're making this decision and sacrificing, right? It's not easy to wake up at 4:45 in the morning. Like, that's not, somebody might find it easy. I don't find it easy. And I don't know if you do, but it's like you're making a sacrifice to take care of yourself, but you're not making that sacrifice for yourself. You're making that sacrifice because you want to be available and the best person for your wife.
Yeah, I want to be the best version of myself as often as possible. And I found that, if I don't do those things, it's not that I'm not a good person. Like, if I miss that stuff, it's not like all of a sudden I'm a bad guy. But when I do that stuff, I tend to be 100% available for them. And so it's a combination. I do it for me too, because I really do want to feel good. I want to look good. I want to, I want to live long, I want to be healthy. There's a lot of stuff that I want out of that morning routine thing that I do. But ultimately, when I walk into my house at 6:30 in the morning after, doing all the things I do, and my wife and my 2 kids are there, I'm like, I am so happy. I'm like a little kid, literally. Like, I'm just ready to play, There's not a lot that is in my path in regards to stress and anxiety, because I beat it all down. And I really do. We all, for the most part, wake up in today's world stressed out, worried about what the day is going to bring. And that's just human condition, when we're sleeping. When when we open our eyes, first thing, it's like, oh shit, what's coming down the pipe? You know, what do I got to do? So if you can buffer that with like a bunch of self-care, self-love, like activities, if you can afford to do it, I highly recommend it. I don't sacrifice time with my wife and kids or my business so that I can take care of that stuff, because that would also make me feel bad. Like if my kids and my wife are up, but I was in the sauna and the cold plunge, like not hanging out with them, like what's the purpose of that, right? Like the whole purpose is that like this is a wholesome, you know, this is the actions that I'm taking early in the morning are so that I can be in commune with my family. I love them. Like,
Right.
genuinely not thinking about me. And so I take care of all of me stuff first, and then I don't have to think about me at all. All I'm thinking about is them. How can I make sure that they're smiling, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's just important to state, you know, it's like, because there is a lot of that language, I think, in our culture of like, you do you and self-care, and those things there's an element of truth in them, but they can get twisted to where it severs relationships, and it's not, you know, a beneficial thing in the end for the people in your life, because it's so all consuming about you.
Yeah.
But when it is like, hey, I want to get this done so that I'm with you, like that's a different pursuit. And I think that's the healthy, right way to do it.
Yep.
Yeah. So I want to go back to your story, and you know, a father and a relationship with a father is a big deal. Like it just is, you know, this, you're a dad. Like you, I'm sure, are aware of how important you are to your kids. And was it an abusive relationship your entire childhood, and has it changed since? Like, when did it start, and when did you realize it was broken?
I mean, you know, as early as I can remember, it was rough in my
Really?
house. My mom and my dad really fought a lot. And my dad never really took any sort of, even as a young kid. And I think generationally, like things are, you know, like my parents' generation, it wasn't really like dads weren't like putting the kids down. You know what I mean? Like dads weren't like, my dad
Changing
wasn't
diapers.
changing my diaper, you know, my
Right.
dad wasn't like cooking dinner for us, you know. So there was none of that connection. And I think my dad was a really selfish human being, you know, and he was probably not meant to have kids. And once I got old enough, probably around 6, 7, 8, where I was really starting to annoy him, is when he started lashing out at me.
Yeah.
And it started, you know, pretty much verbally and emotionally. You know, he would make me feel really bad about things he would say. And then once I got a little older, he would throw me around a little bit. And then once I hit that 11-year-old, 12-year-old age, that's when it got real bad, because I was swinging back and we were fighting. You know, we were like full on fighting. And then the child services got involved, because I'd gotten put in that mental institution to get evaluated. They wanted to know what the hell was going on.
Right.
I told them what was going on. Child services got involved. My house was on my, you know, we lived in this small apartment in New York City. They were monitoring us. They could show up at any time. But if anything happened, you know, and things would happen, you know, my neighbors would call the police. If they heard, you know, loud screaming, yelling, banging, whatever, they called the police, because they kind of knew what was the deal. My dad was kind of nuts. And so whenever the cops would come, they would show up. And finally, when I was 15, I had already been, you know, I was like never at home. I barely ever slept at home.
Yeah.
I was the worst kid. Like parents had no control over me from like 12 on. But they were like, we're going to put this kid in foster care. And, you know, they basically looked at my mom and they said, either you got to leave this man, or you got to take, you know, he's got to go, or the kid's got to go. But one of them's got to go.
Yeah.
Because this can't happen. And that night was the last night I slept at my parents' house. I said to my mom, I was like, you know, I know you're not leaving him because you're scared of him. I've already moved out eventually.
Yeah.
So I'm gone, you know, they're going to have to find me. And yeah, and that's how it ended. My father died in 2001, so he's been dead a long time. So, I wish my dad was still around to see that I'm, a different human being than I was then. I'm sure he'd be proud of me now.
Yeah.
I think my father was I don't think he's a bad human being. I just don't think he was a great father. I think his dad kicked his ass. We come from a military, my grandfather was hardcore naval officer, kicked my dad's ass.
Yeah.
And my dad knew, and generationally, it was way more common practice to smack your kids around then. I could now, being a father of two boys, I could never imagine. Not only could I never imagine putting a hand on my child, I could never imagine saying something like mean to my kids that would make them feel bad.
Yeah.
You're useless. You're, things like that. Like, you're a fucking loser. You're a piece of, you're never going to amount to any. Like, I could never, ever, ever, ever imagine saying those things. This is mind boggling to me.
Yeah. So, when you think about that season of your life, and I think it's interesting, just observation as I was listening to you talk, like your dad was trying to have control, and trying to seize the control, lost it. Like it had the opposite effect, from what his intention was. But like when you think about that season of your life and, how you are who you are today because of it, you talked about how it transitioned you into trying to escape through drugs and alcohol, but what else did it shape in you? Like, are there any other pieces of your character that you can point to and say, yeah, that came out of this hard season? Like, I know that's there. Like, what's one example that you could think of?
You can get through anything. The philosophy that I live by today is the only thing you have to do perfectly is get back up. That's it. It's the only thing in life you've got to do perfectly, ideally, is get back up. If you stay down, you're done. But if you get back up, even if you're staggering, if you get back up, you still got a shot.
Yeah, that's good.
And so all those experiences in my life just showed me that, like, you can get through anything as long as you just get back up. It's like, no matter how far gone you feel like you are, no matter how bad it's been, no matter how many dents are in the hoopty, like, all you gotta do is get back up and you got a shot. So I think that sheer amount of fortitude that I learned over those years of just like, I mean, there were definitely times where, like, I didn't think I was going to make it.
Yeah.
But I got through everything in my life. And I think that's a really interesting thing that people need to also hear, right? Like, it could be so bad, and you could be at the bottom of your barrel right now, and you could be scratching the surface of death or whatever. But the truth is that to this very second, you've gotten through everything in your life. You've gotten through everything. There is nothing that stopped you. You have gotten through every single bad moment. You're still alive. Gotten through everything. We should know that.
Yeah.
Because there's how many, in life, there's always going to be hills and valleys, right? And sometimes when we're in those valleys, we feel like the cloud cover is just going to come in and, man, maybe we're done, maybe we're done. But we get through it. And that is like, I had a mentor of mine a bunch of years ago say, hey man, you know what I want you to start doing? I want you to start writing out your fears. Like, when you feel fear, like real fear about something, write it down in a book, put I am afraid of, and this is why, put a date on it. I'm not going to ask you anything else, but like, this was a kind of like a mentor coach I was working with.
Yeah.
And 3 months after I was doing that, he would ask me to write it, kind of like try to take like at the end of every week, just try to think about a few fears. He said, let's go back and let's look at the fears. And I said, okay. And, he's like, all right, so read me the first couple of weeks. And I read on the first couple of weeks and he said, how many of those fears came to fruition? And I was like, none of them. And he was like, let's read the next few weeks. We read the next few weeks and he was like, all right, how many of those fears came to fruition? And I was like, none of them. And he was like, well, how much time do you think you wasted afraid and in fear when they actually never came to fruition? And I was like, probably a lot of time.
Yeah.
And he's like, so just know, fear is always around. Fear is part of life. You can live in it or you can live with it. You live with it. You put your arm around it. You're aware of it. It's there. You actually use it for motivation. You look for it sometimes, but just know that like fear is not the thing that should take you down. Fear is not the thing that should take you down because most of the time fear is false.
Right.
It's not real.
Right.
And that was such an eye-opening experience for me where I was just like, oh shit, like we spend a lot of time afraid of things, almost to debilitation. And 90% of the things that we spend time worried or in fear of are fabricated in our minds. They're not real.
Right. Right. Yeah, I was talking, man, it was probably a year ago at this point. A guest formerly, his name's Mark Devine. Not sure if you're aware of him or not. He trains Navy SEALs, and he's a firm believer that like our world and the way we experience it is all in our, like, it happens in our mind, predominantly. There are things externally, but like our mind shapes our reality. And to your point, like fear is 100% that way. That, yeah, there are things that are dangerous. There are things that we should be concerned of and cautious of, but like, to what point do we allow them to go?
I think it's we're awesome storytellers, man. We tell ourselves all sorts of stories. You tell the same story over and over again, you believe it. It's kind of like old wise tales. Like you tell yourself the same story over and over again, lie to yourself, you'll believe it.
Yeah. So thinking back, you transitioned out of your home when you were 15, but you said you started escaping the pain of your home when you were like 11 or 12 years old, I think is what you said. What was the moment where you went, I can't keep living this way, addicted to drugs? And what changed that part of your story? Like, because that's a big shift, like you were addicted and you recognized it, but it's hard to break an addiction. So like, what was there a moment that was like, okay, this can't keep happening? Was there a person that intervened? Like what changed it for you?
Yeah. Well, I'd overdosed in July of 2004, late July. And I thought that was going to be the end, like in terms of, I really did say to myself, okay, man, you can't do this anymore. This is real. This is serious. You're going to die. Actually, like if you keep doing this, it's just a matter of time. You'll be dead, because I'd already started losing friends to drugs. And I was walking out of that apartment that I had overdosed in, and I remember it was in the summertime. It was hot. It was like the afternoon, and I said, I can't do it anymore. That's it. It's done. I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. And then that night, I kind of found myself in the same spot doing the same thing. And I said to myself, holy smokes, man, you're caught. You're done. Like you don't know how to stop this. And it's more powerful than you.
Yeah.
Don't have control. You're completely out of control. So you got to make a call, man. And at that moment, I decided to stay down, and I didn't want to get back up. And I said, I'm going to use drugs until I die. That's it. I don't know how to stop. I don't know what to do. And I like me almost dying earlier today didn't put the
Shake
fear.
you out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I essentially said, I'm just going to keep going until it's over. And then I proceeded to do that. I walked, I spent 2 weeks really looking for that. And then it was a Monday morning. I'd been up for like 2 days. I knew I had work because I was working in restaurants. I kept my job in a restaurant. And I'd slept through work. My boss, who is still one of my greatest friends and mentors, he found out that I slept through work, and he was like, Mikey, you're gonna die. I can't watch this happen, man. You're too good a person. I gotta fire you. I can't allow you to work here. You feel like you can do this, and I'm here to tell you, you can't do this. You can't do this. You need to get your shit together. You need to get sober. You need to get sober. And I begged him for my job. My job was the only thing tethering me to like some semblance of a life, like a regular life. And he said, look, man, if you come to the restaurant at 8 o'clock in the morning and call me the second you get here, and you clean the restaurant with the porters for 30 days, for a month, 5 days a week, I'll give you your job back. But if I find out that you took a sip of alcohol, a single pill, any kind of drug, anything, and I'll find out, you're fired for good. And that was the last day I drank or did drugs. I knew that it was like the end of the road for me. I knew that it was gonna, like, I wanted to die the night before. I really wanted to kill myself the night before, actually. And I didn't. I passed out. I slept 16 hours. I called an old friend who I knew was dating someone who was sober. And these two guys ushered into my life, and they were 10 years older than me, really cool dudes, covered in tattoos, and crazy as hell, Muay Thai kickboxing competitors. And they said, we're gonna help you, kid. You just gotta tell you to do. And they knew that I was desperate. They knew that I was down and out. I was at the end of my rope, and they wrote a life plan for me. I don't know if they're two angels they're still two of my greatest friends that saved my life, between Frank, Marcus, and Gavin, and Karen, who introduced me to Marcus and Gavin. They saved my life. And I was introduced to a bunch of people in the sober community. I was brought right into a gym to start training, and they taught me how to eat. And that's where Kreatures of Habit came from. They told me to eat oatmeal every single morning. And that's why I've been eating oatmeal every single day for, 10 years. And that's where my life really started. I like to kind of say I was born again then, and I became, I found faith in the universe. I'm not a super religious person, but I have a deep connection with a higher power that came into my life at that time. I thought I was in control, and I realized that me being in control was killing me. So I needed to turn it over to something that I didn't understand. And I'm cool with that. And so faith is a big part of my life. And I'm forever grateful. I'm forever grateful for, the life and I wouldn't have any of the stuff that I have today if I didn't have a rough relationship with my dad and a 10-year bout with alcohol and drugs,
Yeah. Yeah. Man, there's so much that I want to ask you, but I think my observation is like, having not been in, the community and the environment that you were in for those 8 or 9 years, whatever it was, 10 years of addiction. But listening to you talk about it, it's like you didn't have somebody to like model and attach yourself to that was out of that world. It's like, how do you pull yourself out of the world when there's no connection to any other part of the community? And it was the people that were in the healthier community environment who let you in, come as you are, that like, I think did it for you, right? Like, cause you, when you were on your own, even death itself didn't change you. which is just mind blowing, right? Like when you just like let that thought sink in, but having somebody who could say like, hey, yes, you, even where you're at, I believe in you. Come be a part of this healthier place. Like that was powerful. More powerful than like I could just lose my life in the place I'm in now.
Well, so it's so part of what we're doing at Creatures of Habit, which is a big mission for me personally, but also now part of the brand, is we're partnering with a really amazing foundation called Release Recovery. And I think if I knew dudes like me when I was in this situation, when I was deep in the throes of addiction, if I knew there were dudes like me out there, I can't say that I would have gotten sober sooner, but I will say that there would be a better chance of me getting sober sooner, like for sure. And so I'm partnering with Release Recovery Foundation to really drive awareness and really, put a flag in the ground and say, hey, like you could change. Look at me. Like no one, people would put their house on a bet saying that I would not be the guy I am today, looking at a picture of me 19 years ago. They would put all their money, be an easy bet, easy one, like, sure thing. That guy's going to run marathons and open businesses and have kids and, do all this shit. Like, yeah, no way. Look at that guy. It was an absolute disaster. And so what I'm saying is that there is a solution, and I wish that I want to be part of it. I want to be a big part of that solution. So, because if I knew that there was a Gavin and a Marcus 3 years before I got sober, maybe I wouldn't have OD'd. Maybe I wouldn't have spent, an additional 2 to 3 years of absolute self-hatred, misery, and depression, getting into trouble, making terrible decisions, Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm like reflecting on, just listening to your story. It's like how powerful it was to have some people come alongside you before you were like better, because it's like, I think that's the belief too, is like, I've got to get it right before I can like be a part of that circle of people. It's like, but no, like they said no.
The problem is, I think that the big issue with any sort of massive change is that no one could change anyone, right? Like no one can actually, if the person is not ready, willing, and able to make the change, no one can come in and make me do something for an extended period of time. You could tie me to a radiator for a year. And if I wasn't ready to stop using drugs, the minute you let me go, I would go use drugs. My best friend is smoking crack, homeless. Best friend from childhood, sober also for 10 years, married, amazing life. Like if you only knew how amazing his life was, totally godfather of my kids, and then just fell off. And for the last 3.5 years, I can't do anything to change him. Yeah. It's terrible. The fact that he's still alive is insane. I can't even believe he's still alive. I can't, it's just crazy. So it's a real thing, and our country going through a real problem with it right now. I mean, it's very serious. Yeah. So.
Well, you hit the breaking point, right? And I mean, my wife's story is like that, where she was like, I can't do it. Like everything I'm trying is not working. Like, and for her, it's like, God, I need your help. Like you do it, because I can't do it anymore.
And it's kind of like,
yeah. So she was an alcoholic, and she's been sober since. But it was this point of like, what I'm trying to do doesn't work.
Yeah.
And like, all right, God, you win. What do I need to do? And just like a surrender, and like in the surrender and the like, I'm going to get back up kind of mentality, but like, I need your help. I need help. That's what changed it. And, cause like, man, we are really good at like doing what we already know how to do, but we're not very good at like doing something new.
Right.
And we don't like, we need outside help for that. We need a couple angels to come alongside us and be like, no, this is what you need to do now.
Mhm.
Let me tell you. Yeah. So, man, what a powerful story.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing it. Like it was you went for it and you shared detail, which I don't know. I love when people do that because I just think it's more compelling. You know, like the 30,000 foot view, and obviously it is to some extent because it's your life. There's so many details, but like the 30,000 foot view is I had a hard childhood. Like that's just people can't. It's hard to relate and latch on, but the vulnerability of like scenarios and situations and like that's what people can be like, oh, that's me, and then relate and come out and I can I can do this, you know. And so I'm just grateful that you were willing
So
to
many, I that's why I'm like, I've become super comfortable sharing my story because when I was going through it, I wish I would have heard more people that had similar experiences that would make me feel like, okay, man, I'm not alone here. You know, a lot of
yeah,
people have struggles. A lot of people go through, have rough childhoods and deal with addiction and in all sorts of ways. It doesn't have to be drugs and alcohol. It could be
right,
food, it could be spending money, it could be gambling, it could be sex. You know, there's so many things that we can sort of obsess over and latch onto as an escape from our reality and feel like there's no other way. And the
yeah,
truth of the matter is, my experience is that not only is there a solution for it, but a number of solutions for it, but it's so much better on the other side. You know, it just like the life that I've been able to build today, and I'm not saying that like, you know, I want a trophy or like pat me on the back. I'm saying that out of sheer gratitude.
yeah,
The experience that I've had has offered me the ability to, I really feel like I could do anything.
mm,
I know today that like I can, anything I say I'm going to do, I'm going to do. And
yeah,
I only know that is because one of the hardest things I've ever had to do was quit drinking and doing drugs. And
right,
I'm able to not only, I wasn't able to do it. I do it every day. I do not drink or do drugs every day, you know? And, you know, I was a big smoker before, you know, I got sober. I quit smoking pretty much right when I got sober, but then I picked up these nicotine patches like 7 years ago. And I was doing these nicotine pouches. It was like the last bad habit I had. And in the beginning of the year, I was like, what the hell am I doing?
yeah. Why am I doing this?
So addicted to this nicotine pouch. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Like, this is insane that I do this. I'm like, I care so much about my health and my longevity and my performance and my family and my, you know, like I'm sucking on nicotine. Like, what the hell? And I just said, I'm not going to do it. That's it. And that was it.
Mm,
Literally just stopped doing it. That was
yeah,
it. And I haven't
yeah,
had a single one since. And so, you know, is that hard? Yeah, that's hard. Is it possible? 1000%.
mm,
You know, people ask me often like, oh, how do you do that? How do you wake up early? How do you blah, 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 blah. How do you get into the cold plunge every day? How do you? And my answer is, you just do.
mm,
That is it. There's no pill. It's just not. It's like you. I believe that learning to love the hard and the hurt is the pathway to happiness and unstoppability. If you
mm,
if you can learn to love it, right? Like when you're in a workout and it's like, oh my God, this is hard. This is like painful. Like I was there today. I was
yeah.
there today. I did 20 cows on the Echo bike, followed by 15 thrusters, followed by bar muscle ups, 5 rounds. I was dying. I had that barbell on my chest on like the 10th thruster in the fourth round, and I thought I was gonna die. I couldn't breathe. This is what it is. This
Yeah.
is it. Right here, right now. Are you gonna fucking throw the bar down on the ground, or are you gonna power through this and finish this workout?
Mm-hmm.
That was it. I did it. I pushed through. I fought through it. I finished the workout, and then I reflected back on it and I said, that is it.
That's the moment.
That's where the rubber meets the road in life.
Mm-hmm.
Fight and get through it. Look for it. Put yourself in the position to experience it. And then live to tell the story, or are you going to throw in the towel? What are you going to do?
Right.
You're on
And
the
you're going to have to ask. Right.
You know, like I believe doing hard things is the key. It's the key. It's the that's why I get in the cold. I jump into a 38-degree cold plunge every morning. I hate it. Every morning I negotiate. Every morning without fail. Never a morning goes by, unless I'm traveling, that I am not jumping in that freaking tub and fighting the whole way through, kicking and screaming. It never gets easy. It's always a situation. But you get out of that thing and you feel like $1 zillion because
you just conquered the world. Yeah.
You won.
Yeah. Well, I started doing the cold shower thing, just kind of like, all right, I'm just going to try it. People keep talking about it. And I haven't noticed like the health benefits that people talked about, but I have noticed the like, oh, I did that. Like I won. And there's like this mental boost that comes of like we were talking about earlier, this discipline begets discipline kind of like, oh, I just did that. What else can I do now? You know? And it's like that boost that I get out of it more than anything. It sounds like
for me, you know, all of these things that we've been talking about at the end of the day are wins. They're mental. And when you win, I'm not saying it like we should live for the win, but winning is awesome. And so if you control wins throughout your day, you can actually control them. What you put into your body, how you move your body, if you're asking for help enough, how you're asking for help, God, universe, whatever it is, meditation, breath work. Are you, putting yourself in difficult situations that you know are going to feel good when you're done? Fitness and cold plunge, like those things for me are like, those are all mental health medicine for me. It's all, I believe that is what keeps me sober. I believe that is what keeps me grounded. I believe doing hard things is I love that we're on the Doing Hard Things podcast, because I really do think doing hard things is the magic sauce.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah. There's a verse in the Bible that's suffering leads to perseverance. Perseverance leads to character, and character leads to hope. And so it's like suffering, this doing hard things is this final result of these other three things that come after it, all with the end result of hope. Like there's something worth it. And it's really, I agree. I couldn't agree more. Like this is kind of like where everything gets formed in us, is like the resistance, the friction, the difficulty. You don't change and grow in comfort. Like that just doesn't happen, you know? No. And so you just stay the same. So I'm right there with you. Okay. For sake of time, I'm going to land the plane. But before we get off of this, I want to give people a chance to connect with you and Creatures of Habit and follow you. So where can people find you in the internet or in the world? How can they keep up with you?
Yeah, the best place to stay to follow along on my journey is at Michael Chernow. Pretty much everywhere. I post a lot of content. I love making content. So I'm I'm very consistent daily content guy.
Awesome.
On Instagram and TikTok. And Creatures of Habit with a K. You can check out the website, creaturesofhabit.com on the website. And then you can also check us out on Instagram, predominantly at Creatures of Habit. And those are the main ways to stay in the loop with what I'm doing.
Well, we'll drop the links in the show notes for people, and make sure that people can find you if they're interested. And I'm sure your story will be an encouragement to a bunch of people. I mean, it's powerful. So thanks for sharing it, Michael. And it was really encouraging for me. So I'm glad you're willing to do it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening to the Do Hard Things podcast by Elite SRS. We hope you are encouraged today and have a newfound hope to persevere. Be sure to subscribe for more great episodes and conversations. And if you ever want to watch an episode, check out our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/EliteSRS. Have a blessed day.